As a reporter, host, an anchor, an analyst, whenever you have these jobs and we're talking about research, the research is that you're following the story, that you know all of the storylines, not just of the day, but the history of a particular team or a person that you're reporting on. And that is because you have to make that information digestible for the viewer. Preparation is interesting because I often would meet people who, there's a difference between being a host and being a reporter and being an anchor. And sometimes people can do all of those things. There's also a difference between being an analyst. But what all of those jobs require is research. You got to do your homework. Now, what the homework is for each individual job is different. As a host of First Take, I had to make sure that one of two things was happening. I watched all the games. I knew what the boys would talk about. I knew at the time Skip loved the Cowboys, so I watched every single Cowboy game. That was my beat. I knew what was going on with the beat. Stephen A. loved the Steelers. I always knew what was going on with the Pittsburgh Steelers because that was his beat, and I knew inevitably we would discuss that on the show. But I also knew what the beats of the particular show that I was hosting were about, which means you have to know what the sweet spot is. You have to know what's your bread and butter. When I went to host SportsCenter, our bread and butter is everything. So I need to know a little bit of everything, and I need to be really knowledgeable about the most popular sports that we are going to talk about of the day. And so for me, hosting, being an anchor, also being able to, and not analyst because that wasn't necessarily my gig, but report, I had to make sure that I did the research. So what that looked like. The research always starts 2, 3, 4, 5 days before you even go to work. Every Sunday I sat in front of the TV every single Sunday. From sunup to sundown, I watched every single game. I made sure that I had Red Zone. I had made sure I watched the local games. I made sure that I listened to the analysts on every different network and their different perspectives. I made sure that I paid attention to the big interviews that would come on Sundays. You could not tell me what there was happening. I already knew. You couldn't say, Cari, did you hear? Like, absolutely I did hear. Did you know? Yes, I do know. That's every single Sunday. I didn't have Sundays where I would go and sit with my gals and be cute and hang out at the bars and drink. I sat in front of the TV at home and watched games. And if not, more often than not, it would be with my other colleagues who worked in sports as well. Come Monday, I have already done my research. I've read everything. I'm reading what we call our hot list and different news that's coming down the pike about what's happening overnight. I'm already up on it. I'm following the trail. It's called a specific beat. You know your beat. No one can tell me what's going on in the world of sports without me already knowing because I've done the homework and I follow the stories. And most importantly, the research isn't just sitting in there and memorizing. The research is actually understanding, learning the game, understanding the storylines. Every single team has a storyline. I'll pick the Lakers, for instance. Obviously, I've been following the Lakers since I lived here and I was a kid, but I can tell you about every single major shift in management. I can tell you about every major trade. I can tell you about when certain players wanted to trade and they decided to stay because there were different things happening behind the scenes. I can tell you why Dr. Buss chose Kobe over Shaq. I can go down a list of things because that's my beat. As a reporter, host, an anchor, an analyst, whenever you have these jobs and we're talking about research, the research is that you're following the story, that you know all of the storylines, not just of the day, but the history of a particular team or a person that you're reporting on. And that is because you have to make that information digestible for the viewer.